Folks, there was a $2,000 a month second stimulus program proposed back in April and May of this year. What happened to it? Stick around to find out. Welcome to Balancing the Scales, the Economic Justice Report. This is your host, Vic Bernsdorf, and on today's show we're going to be talking about these three topics: Sweden's social and family benefits, the status of the 2K monthly status checks that were promised us back in April, and public banks to the rescue. So, let's start our first show segment, Swedish social and family benefits. I'll start by giving you an overview of what the Swedish government offers its citizens. And let me start by saying, it's a well-known fact that, Nordic taxes across the board for all those countries in Scandinavia are high. Sweden taxes are high. They're high compared to other most advanced countries. So where do those taxes go? Right? They go into providing a work-life balance within their society, right? Work-life balance, folks. What a concept. Okay, look, the idea is that every Swedish worker contributes to their society through their taxes so that the government can offer family-friendly policies. The idea is that every Swedish worker contributes to society through their taxes so that the Swedish government can offer family-friendly policies to every Swedish citizen. Okay? So what does Sweden get? What do the Swedish people get for all the high taxes that they pay? I'll be converting the Swedish krone into the American dollars so as a frame of reference. Okay, let's start with monthly child allowance. Sweden offers a monthly child allowance of about $142 a month, 2019 dollars. They also offer fully tax-funded schooling for children and young adults. Get this, at 18 months old, that's when children start using preschool, and the cost of that preschool is capped at about $142 a month. Same amount as their child allowance, right? So the residents of Sweden, the citizens of Sweden, they don't have to worry about saving money for their children's future education, right? At all. As in ever, folks. Why? Because school for their children from 6 years old through university is completely taxpayer funded. Most of that education also includes paying for their lunches, right? So, no yearly tuition fees for Swedish families to sweat about. There are none. Unlike us poor Americans here. Right? What else? Parental leave. Parental leave for both baby bonding purposes and for any family sicknesses. Right? In Sweden, parents are entitled to 480 days of paid parental leave when a child is born or adopted. And there's also gender equity. Each Swedish parent is entitled to 240 of those 480 days of paid parental leave. And today, men in Sweden use about 30% of all paid parental leave. Largely taxpayer-funded healthcare is another big one. Taxpayer-funded healthcare. The word tax is really demonized here in America, but over there it's not a problem, right? Because there's more money in your pocket after you pay your taxes than we have here after we pay for things privately. So let me get back to the taxpayer-funded healthcare in Sweden. The majority of Sweden's healthcare, like I said, is paid for through taxes. Before the age of 20, healthcare is basically free for every Swedish citizen. Get this, a doctor's visit will cost you between $11 and $34. Yeah, $11 and $34, depending on where you live. While a specialist consultation costs a maximum of $45. If you incur more than $125 in fees per year, there's a high-cost protection program that kicks in, which provides free health care for you for the rest of that year. Okay? Oh, one more thing. Almost all dental care in Sweden is free of charge until the day you turn 24 years old. Let's watch this short clip and come back and talk about it.
Really?
After having her baby Eleanor, Vanessa Hawes took 12 weeks off from her retail job, unpaid. It caused a cash flow crunch.
Anytime that I went to the grocery or had to get gas or buy diapers, I bought everything on my credit cards.
Eleanor's father, Nick McAuliffe, took no unpaid leave because if he did,
we would starve to death if I did.
American women are currently entitled to 12 weeks unpaid leave. American men are entitled to nothing. That information landed differently for me when 1 week after my son's birth, I could barely walk. That information landed differently when I was getting to know a human who was completely dependent on my husband and I for everything, when I was dependent on my husband for most things, and when we were relearning everything we thought we knew about our family and our relationship. It landed differently.
You know, folks, it's really disgusting how we treat people in America, how we treat our own citizens, how the government treats them. Personal story now from an American living in Sweden. I'm going to quote from him. This is what he said. The 33 million Americans who are not covered by health insurance don't have much of a choice when they get sick. It's either pay or die. And the privatized U.S. system spends more money per person than Sweden does for its socialized healthcare system. $4,400 for us, $3,100 for Sweden. And I got to choose my doctor. I got high quality care, a short walk away from my home, same day appointments, and short waits, even when I walk in unannounced. End of quote. That quote comes to you from Vox.com, and the person who said that was Tom Haberlin, an American living in Sweden. So ask yourself, why wouldn't you want these family-friendly programs for yourself? So in Sweden, you're guaranteed 5 weeks paid vacation. And get this, working overtime is not appreciated. It's considered as poor time management on your part. Okay? Sweden built what is often called the world's most generous social welfare system. It has virtually free, when I say free, I'm talking about after you pay your taxes. Okay? After you pay your taxes at the point of service. Okay? That's where it's free. So this is what you get. So you get virtually free schools. When I say schools, I'm talking about not K through 12, K through university. Okay? For childcare, healthcare, pensions, elderly care, all taxpayer financed. On top of that, the Swedish government recently introduced a 2-year trial in some Swedish cities, reducing the workday to just 6 hours. 6-hour workday. Good luck trying to get that here in America, huh? So, what's the takeaway from this show segment today, huh? This is socialism at work, folks. In Sweden, it's called a social democracy. It results in a system that helps all workers live a mostly stress-free life, at least in economic terms, okay? Because basic human needs are respected and are provided for at a low cost. How is that done? Because the profit motive is removed for essential human services. I'll say it again. The profit motive is removed for essential human services. Remember that in these socialist countries, right, healthcare is considered a human right, and education is regarded as a civil right. Okay? And these are the reasons that the Republican lawmakers hate socialized anything, and have to demonize countries that have it, to keep the American people from knowing about it, and liking it as a result, and asking for it. Asking for these programs. Okay? Note that these Republican lawmakers always scare Americans about Scandinavia's high taxes, but never say that those tax payments cost their citizens a lot less for services than using after-tax dollars as we do here in America, because of the economies of scale that they create. Huh? So now you know why Republicans hate the word socialism so much, because it's a humane system that helps its people and not corporations. Okay? All right, now on to our next show segment. Okay, so this next story I call $2,000 a month. Stimulus checks or not? Let me give you an overview of what's going on here. This next story will show you two things. Number one, which party in the United States government has your back and which party doesn't, and how other countries put politics aside and come together to help their citizens meet their economic needs during this pandemic. So now listen to this statement. And I quote, "The economic impact of this virus is unprecedented for our country. As millions of Americans file for unemployment week after week, we have to work quickly to patch the dam, and that means putting cash into the hands of hard-working families. End of quote. That quote was from Tim Ryan, Ohio's 13th Congressional District Democrat. So bill number H.R. 6496 was introduced by Tim Ryan and Ro Khanna, both Democrats, and they introduced the bill to put money into the hands of the American people as American people struggle to make ends meet during the pandemic, where millions of Americans have lost their jobs or lost their income, in addition to losing their health care. Let me give you a summary of the bill, and I quote, "To provide a new round of stimulus payments of $2,000 per month to U.S. citizens and residents over the age of 16 who earn $130,000 or less per year. After the first 6 months, the program could be renewed for an additional 6 months unless the employment to population ratio reaches a pre-COVID-19 level of 60%. End of quote. Okay, so that bill has 41 co-sponsors. Not a single co-sponsor is a Republican. Okay? Not a single. All Democrats are trying to put money into your pocket to help you weather this pandemic. A little bit detailed view now on what's going on here with this bill. Look, while the American Republican Party wants to offer only crumbs to suffering American workers and their families, this is how France and the UK has been helping their workers. And I quote now, "The French government has already paid and will continue to pay up to 84% of salaries for furloughed workers until next summer, 2021, due to the prolonged economic fallout from the corona pandemic," Labour Minister Elizabeth Borne announced Thursday on France's BFM television. France has already spent tens of billions of euros on the temporary unemployment scheme since the start of the coronavirus pandemic in an effort to save jobs. End of quote. And what's happening in the UK? I'll quote, "Rishi Sunak, the UK's Chancellor of the Exchange Choir, laid out an unprecedented plan Friday. For the first time in British history, the government will help pay workers' wages in response to the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. The proposal would prevent the mass layoffs we've seen in the United States by having the government cover 80% of the salary of every citizen who's unable to work, up to £2,500 per month, a figure that's just higher than the median income. The Chancellor assured the country that all employers would be eligible to apply for this relief plan for its workers, regardless of industry, size, or any other factor, and that paychecks could be backdated to March 1st. End of quote. Now listen to this next statement. "You will not face this emergency alone," Sunak said in the broadcast announcement. "Now more than any time in history, we will be judged for our capacity for compassion." I'll read that again. "You will not face this emergency alone," Sunak said in the broadcast announcement. "Now, more than any time in history, we will be judged for our capacity for compassion." End of quote. Folks, if ever there was a need for our Republican leaders to show compassion for their suffering American compatriots, it's now. Okay, so the question is this. What's the status of the bill? Where's the money for the suffering Americans? Well, it never made it past the bill introduction stage. Gee, I wonder which party is holding it up, huh? So where is the compassion in our compassionate conservatives, the Republican Party? Huh? That's what I want to know. Okay, let's move on now to our final show segment. Okay, before I go into the last segment of the show today, let me just let everyone know that all reference sources for the material I presented today and in all shows will be found under the description section of the show and the YouTube channel. Okay, so let's start with public banks to the rescue. Let me give you guys an overview of what's going on and why public banks are really important, especially nowadays. Let's start by saying across the country, people are really suffering the consequences of a predatory banking system and have been for years. Local businesses can't get the credit they need to grow in most instances, or in many instances. College graduates have student loan debt with huge interest rates. There are predatory mortgages and consumer loans that are ruining lives in neighborhoods. Cities and states have to borrow money from Wall Street institutions at huge interest rates. The people in these cities and states are getting ripped off That's the bottom line, okay? Cities and states should be keeping their public dollars in community-owned banks for their own community needs, right? And that's exactly what public banks do. They cut out the Wall Street middlemen leeches. That's why I'm really proud of California. Towns and cities in California can now create a public bank if they need it. Okay? The money that goes in a community-owned or public bank stays home to benefit the needs of the community, right? So public banks help towns and cities create parks, good roads, safe bridges, clean energy, and affordable housing, whatever they need to develop, right? Let's watch this video clip that describes public banking. We'll come back and talk about it.
In this city, in anywhere USA, the residents of this city have decided they want a park. The city council agrees the park is a great idea. But how will they pay for it? The city needs to borrow money. But borrowing money means the city has to pay a lot more money in interest and fees that could double the cost of the park. And that money leaves the city. It goes to Wall Street investors who really don't care about the park or the city at all. This is a bad deal for the city and its residents. There's a much better option, an option that's been proven around the world. A public bank. A public bank is a bank owned by the residents of a city, state, region, or territory. Private Wall Street banks just want to make profits for their shareholders. But public banks have a mission to serve the public good. They have to reflect the values and needs of the community. And that makes all the difference. Politicians don't run a public bank. Their job is to just set it up by listening to what the people need and want. Public banks are run by skilled local bankers who know their neighbors. Residents are on the supervising board to keep tabs on what the bank's doing. Public banks can save communities lots of money. First, they cut out expensive Wall Street fees, which can be hundreds of millions of dollars a year in a big city. Second, they can lower interest rates on the city's loans, which means there's more money to spend on other projects. Third, their profits go back to the city, not to Wall Street, so a public bank can make money for the city. All this means the people of the city have a lot more money to fund all the things they need, such as bridges, good roads, good schools, renewable energy, affordable housing, lower taxes, and the park the people wanted. They now control their own money, and they can build their own future. Join the movement. To find out more, go to publicbankinginstitute.org.
So you get the concept, folks. I mean, these banks are really great because they're owned by the people of a state, city, community. They're required to benefit the public by serving local needs, and they can save city, state, and local governments millions, if not billions of dollars by cutting out the cost of middlemen and private shareholders. Bank profits, if there are any, they're reinvested into the treasury of that community as a source of funding for whatever the town or city needs to build. Playgrounds, renewable energy systems, affordable housing, whatever, right? They're run by qualified bankers serving a public mission, okay? They provide accountability and transparency to the public for bank decisions. They create new jobs and spur economic growth because they support small businesses. And get this, they can lend during times of stress and crisis to sustain a healthy local economy. Now, providing funding during a pandemic sure would be nice, huh? So an easy way to think of public banks is by comparing them to something that you already know about, like credit unions, okay? So to compare public banks to credit unions, basically it's a scale of money involved that's different. And also it's the purpose of a public bank that's different. Credit unions are used by local residents and small businesses pretty much, and a public bank is used for cities and towns to develop large infrastructure projects, like I said before, like you saw in that video clip, right? Again, it's for parks, wastewater plants, roads, bridges, buildings, whatever, right? For the community. So what's the takeaway for this segment on public banking? Well, support the creation of a public bank in your town or city. Trust me, you don't want predatory private banks to suck up your hard-earned dollars and that don't care about the needs of your community, right? Let's have a say in creating better communities and neighborhoods for ourselves and our children. Well, that's the show for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Next week, we'll be talking about what happened to teaching civics in America so people know how to vote so we can get representatives in government who actually care about our needs. That's coming up next week. If you like what you hear on this show, please consider subscribing. In any event, have a great day. And always remember, you deserve the government you vote for.